What is up, everybody? Today we are going to go over HUBS, special request from a couple traders, and I wanted to share my thoughts a little bit more on how I think about M&A and then go over the play that happened on July 10th, I believe it was. Okay, so to start off for this, we want to highlight the importance of having very good symbol notes. And so you always want to be really tuned in to what's going on in M&A world. You want to have good notes on your software for each ticker. And then even it doesn't hurt to have a spreadsheet with all the companies in active M&A talks, or really just any type of, really just a master M&A spreadsheet is something I recommend a lot of people have. And if you take good notes, you'll know that really this saga kind of started on 4-4. April 4th, and it was that a headline came through, I think it was a Reuters headline, that Google was in talks to potentially buy HubSpot, and I think talks were still pretty early. I'd have to look up the exact details, but what we want to do is we want to go back and look at what happened as far as the trading action on this specific day. And not just this day, but also I'm going to even use that next day as another potential indicator. So what I want to do is I want to now go to, let's see, 4-4 and 4-5. And I'm going to make it apparent why this is so important and how I kind of think about how does one actually calculate how much a stock was up on a specific headline. So pretty much off the open, we weren't really doing anything. Then shortly thereafter, we do have the headline come out and we immediately go halted limit up. And so one question is what price do we use for our notes as far as how high the headline moved the stock? And we don't want to use the high because sometimes that's just a very reactionary price where we touch it, we come off. And so what is the right price? So generally I tend to look for some type of equilibrium once we've kind of been trading. And this isn't so perfect, but what I would say is based on this price action later in the day, I would say 675 is maybe the equilibrium, but then the next day we were pretty solid at around 680, like just totally dead set there. So I would pretty much say 675 to 680. We started pretty much 630. So if you were to ask me, I would say that this went up probably, I don't know, call it 7-8%. And so what I would do in my notes is Google interested in buying HubSpot, any other details as far as timing, price, whatever it might have been in the article. Then I'll write just +7, +8%, something like that, and I'll have the date. And so why is that relevant? Okay. Fast forward now, a couple months later, a lot of people have already forgotten the headline and all the details. And what happens is it comes out on 7-10 that Google is no longer interested. And so there's a couple things we need to think about. So first of all, like, yes, we're way lower already than where we were before. And the thing is, though, you can't just take like, oh my God, like this was coming from, you can't just blindly say this was coming from 630, therefore this shouldn't have any effect. Because you don't know, like this is still new incremental news, and whatever was weighing on this pricing, like it's sometimes hard to know if it's more beta and just the market had been doing one thing, or if the pullback in the shares over this time was expectations that this deal wouldn't happen. And so some other tricks to kind of decipher that, we can go to potentially some comparables. I don't think HubSpot has like a ton of comparables. I mean, I think like CRM is potentially one. So CRM definitely has had trouble over that period because we were talking April 4th. So that's pulled back a fair amount. The more close competitors you have, the more you can get a gauge for how much of this pullback to 550 is kind of the market versus how much is that headline being almost anticipated and front rent. But regardless, you don't want to make too many assumptions. And when this headline is up 7-8%, it's so much like there's a lot of factors that move share prices. So the same way that I just don't want to be like, oh my God, we're at 560 now. This is already priced in, and that's part of why we came off. I don't necessarily want to make that assumption. And vice versa, though, I don't want to make the other assumption and say, oh, just because we went up 7-8% this time means we need to go down exactly 7%, 8% that time. So now let's go to 7-10 and we'll look a little bit more closely at everything. 7-10. Oops. Okay. Okay, so the headline kind of came out later in the day. And so first things first, like if you're really on top of the context for all this M&A, the second that headline comes out, like no thinking, if you can get good prints, you just need to short that. When it's up so much on the initial headline, this is at least going to get some type of reaction if this is the first time we're getting that totally new rebuttal that, okay, deal talks are off. And so I think this is why it's so important. It's so important to have a lens for how price action moves, but then most important and more important than any view is you have a system, right? So let's say you're the type of person that thinks, oh my God, this stock is already down from where it was on the original headline. This headline shouldn't be moving at all. That doesn't mean you want to blindly fade this. Like a system is what allows you to execute a view without getting yourself into trouble. So even if I think this shouldn't be going down a ton, I might think this is really, really juicy, but I still want to wait for that turn. And based on my system, I'm probably not getting long until, I don't know, 480-ish. And you could argue, oh my God, you're missing a ton of points. That's okay, because that's really the safe way to play. Now, there's a few other ways to play this. So first, like just based on the short, like without a doubt, the short is an amazing, amazing opportunity if you can get prints. A lot of meat on that bone. If you hold it to the 2-minute trailing bar stops, no analysis, no deep thinking needed, just following the pure system, that is a really, really nice chop. So I think a lot of people were interested in this long, in which it's like, even if you have the view that this shouldn't be going down that much, because even if we factor the 7% or whatever, this is down a huge amount more than that. This was down almost 20% at one time. And so that is really appealing in theory, but you still need the system of how you're going to go about trading this. And ideally, you're not just like, right, if you're like, oh my God, 7% and we already were down, you don't want to just be blindly long from like 510, 505, 500, because what are you going to do when it just keeps going? And so what I would say is when we're approaching down probably like 15% or so, whatever this is here, that is starting to get extremely, extremely appealing based on everything, but you still want to be careful. I've seen so many M&A moves where a stock might have only been up X amount on the initial headline, but then it goes down much further. And oftentimes there's other read-throughs that can happen. And a lot of times these situations are more complex. So you need to be careful of that. And like, I don't mind buying small into this move, but really, like, it's not enough to just have the view. You really need the system to safely capture it. And so I probably would have been buying some small size into this, especially as we were really getting that nice volume spike there. Then the way to do it is just to add on that turn. And even using just, again, simple systems of those prior bar lows, this ends up working pretty darn well. Getting out at 490 is good. I don't think this is some home run. But I guess at the minimum, like the whole point of this is like to show my thinking of how I interpret some of these M&As, the things that I'm factoring in as far as some of the percentage moves. And then overall that no matter how confident I am, I still ultimately rely on a system. There's going to be many ways to trade this overall though. Like there's certain times where I might have a very strong view and feel that, especially if there's potentially one buyer driving the stock or one seller driving the stock, like if there's some seller that's responsible for this down move and I think on a percentage basis it's just way overdone, that might make me more willing to get a little bit more aggressive on the front side. But then I really want to just be patient for those ads. Because even getting a price at 480, that's still better than if you're just like mathematically blindly averaging into this. But what I would say is especially given the volume, this is starting to get pretty darn juicy, where I probably would be I don't know, maybe even medium sized on the front side, given the context of this, and then just really adding on that break. And I think there's a lot of different ways to trade this stuff. There's a lot of different expertise and data you can bring to the table. But I think most important is no matter what you're bringing to the table, you need a system that's going to keep you safe for when things extend further than you might imagine. If we look back and take that Sam headline, the Boston beer on the Suntory approach, that headline went so much further than I ever would have imagined. And you need to be able to survive if you do have a view so that you're in a position that you can capture it positively when things do revert. So let me know if you guys have any questions. I hope this helps. And I'm going to try and do more of these granular ones on M&A to help you guys see how I interpret these headlines, what I think of this stuff, and some of those nuances. Thanks so much.